using some very simple techniques, but in a complicated way. We're purposely using, you have to turn off your microphones. We're getting background noise. You have to turn off your microphones. We're purposely using a project which is too big and too complicated for one person to understand it all. That's very purposeful. And the reason for that is because the techniques that we want to experiment with, to use, are ways of working collaboratively and working at the very beginning and strategic level of a project. We're not working at the level where you can build something directly. The product is, quote, something like this, we think is a good idea. The purpose in working on Cagliari in Sardinia as the case study is because we've done several projects on Cagliari and we know it. And some of you who have been working in workshops with Michele and me and Chiara before have seen Cagliari before, and I know that that's the case. But it's a typical problem. It has a little bit of everything that everybody in the world has to face. It's big enough, but not too big. It's complicated enough, but not too complicated. It's near enough. It's familiar enough, but not totally familiar. But it's too big for one person. Almost all of us who teach have the experience of putting 5 to 20 or so people in a room, making them work in small groups or individually, and maybe, like I do, in a large group of the whole. And they might work for 5 or 6 hours together at a time. But in the last year, and especially those of us who are directly affected by the virus situation globally, are in universities that have actually closed person-to-person contact. I live in London. My university is closed. Oxford is closed. Cambridge is closed. And they're not only closed, they're going to be closed in the next year. Harvard is closed. MIT is closed. The schools are going to be teaching over the internet. Now, I've taught over the internet. I did my first project jointly over the internet with a German university and another one with a Mexican university 20 years ago. 20 years ago. It was a terrible experience. Terrible. It just didn't work. It didn't work anywhere near collaboratively. But this is a different time. Rishi has done workshops collaboratively, and 5 years ago, I and Rishi and Tess Campfield ran a project in 13 countries 5 years ago on Skype, on an early version of Skype. And now it's even better. But there are very big differences in the social psychology of working where everybody is in a remote place. The one lesson which Rishi pointed out a couple of weeks ago was that you can't sit for 6 hours in front of your computer. It's just awful. It's an awful experience. So instead of teaching a workshop like this in 1 day or in 2 days with people in one room where they can get up and go have coffee and they can meet with their friends and smoke a cigarette or do whatever the hell they like, we've decided, with Rishi's advice, but with a set of experiments 2 weeks ago that some of you were in, to break it into 3 pieces or even 4 pieces. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce you, not for the first time for some of you, but to some ideas about why we work the way we do, and the characteristics of Cagliari. And then I've purposely organized you into diverse teams so that in general, each of the teams has a coordinator, and the coordinator is not the team leader, but the person who actually coordinates things. So that the coordinators and the team members are small, teams of 3 or 4, and in one case, 2 cases, 5. but they're all in different countries. And that doesn't make it easy for you, it makes it harder. But I'm doing it because this is the way to experiment. You'll figure out whether it's too hard or it's easy. And if it's easy, it might generate a lot more cross-fertilization of projects in schools. If I'm doing a project in Nigeria, I'm certainly going to call Maimuna, who is sitting there, and say, let's get your students and my students together. Why not? If it's easy. But if it's difficult, hell with it. You can stay in Nigeria and I'm going to stay in London. It's not going to work. So you might as well experiment in this kind of a circumstance, because you may be the one sitting at home with the virus and your students may be someplace else and you still have to teach them. So it's a very serious experiment. The purpose of it is not to make a wonderful plan for Cagliari in Italy. Most of you have never been to Cagliari. I have. It's a wonderful place. And Michele, who's joining me, is a wonderful host. Michele is up there. And Dublin is a great place. And Rishi knows Dublin very, very well, and he's a good host. But maybe we have to work together over the internet. So this is a different experience. And we, meaning Michele, me, Rishi, who have organized these things quite a few times, we're learning. We really are changing things every time. And that's important. It's an important learning experience. Now, there's no reason to take any notes. There is reason to pay attention, but not to take notes, for two reasons. Number one, we are going to record the whole event. It'll be up on YouTube. Second, I'm going to be sharing a PowerPoint presentation with Rishi, or he won't, I'll give his part, that's up to him, and with Michele. And after we're done in this meeting, I'm going to send a copy of the entire PowerPoint to everybody who's on my list for this session. All right. Now, realize the following. I've put you into these teams. There may well be some people on the teams who are not in this session. For example, I don't know if Shlomit is in the session. She's a professor, and I actually don't think she's in it, but she's the coordinator of one of the teams. And if she doesn't show up, and Peter doesn't show up, then Vladimir, you're at Mendel University and you are here.
Peter is here.
Who's here?
Peter is here.
Oh, Peter made it in. Good, Peter, good. I'm glad you're here. Peter, if Shlomit doesn't, if Shlomit isn't able to join us, she's a very experienced person. She's professor at Bar Ilan University in Israel. She's a graduate of CASA, of UCL, a geographer, and quite experienced. But if she doesn't show up, I'm going to ask you to act as the coordinator for the team that you're listed as. Okay, so at the end of this session, we will have taught you some of the basic fundamental attributes of the software and how to propose a policy or a project, how to make a design, how to remove things from a design. And we're going to be asking everybody between now and Monday, each team to make 10 diagrams. It's a piece of homework. You don't need help to do it. You'll know how to do it. And then we're going to ask you to meet for the workshop at the time that's scheduled, about 20 to 15 minutes beforehand, because I almost always have to make adjustments to the teams. There will be emergencies. There will be some people dropping out. There may be some people joining us. So there always has to be some adjustment. And that's life, it happens. But we'll proceed as scheduled with the people who joined the workshop a little 15 minutes, 20 minutes before the workshop. So be aware of that. And we'll keep the workshop very, very close. 2 hours today, 1 hour maximum for the work during the weekend, and 4 hours for the workshop. It'll work perfectly okay. It'll work perfectly okay. All right. So I want to share. Rishi, are you here now?
No, I'm managing now.
Okay. So I want to share my screen now.
Yeah, you should be able to do it.
Okay, and there's my screen. And now do you see my screen?
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to be focusing on how to make it, how to make and express a synthesis. And let me take you to the beginning. So this is the set of teams. And as you can see from what I had previously sent you this, I've made the teams as actually as mixed and as interesting as I could. I've tried to spread the students around so that every team is a mixture of faculty, instructors, and some students. And English is the language of choice. That's the way it is. This is the generic problem. Hold on one second. Michele, I want to get out of my Zoom for a moment, just a minute. I need to escape for a second. I need to turn on Zoom. I need to minimize it. And now I'm going to go back to my screen. Okay, what's the generic problem? The generic problem is that at the scale of a house, people do very, very well. They can either build the house themselves, they can have an architect, they can buy a house. This is not for the design of a house, although it could be. The design of the whole world, the scientists do a very good job understanding it, not a very good job planning it, and the politicians do a very bad job planning it. But this is also not really at this scale. The scale that we're talking about is in this middle group, where there's a very large project or a city that has to grow, or a regional watershed, a river valley that is much more complicated and has to be managed. And the generic problem is how do we organize? Organize meaning we know we need a team. We know we need a collaboration. It's too big for one person. And how do we conduct? How do we manage the very beginning and strategic stages of designing? You can use the word planning, designing. I'm using Simon's view of designing, meaning making and proposing intentional change, to do something by design, to do something intentionally. For longer term change, in this case, 30 years, 2 generations, in a large, multi-system, multi-client, and contentious context, meaning that some of the people we're designing for aren't born yet, and some of the people who are here now will not longer be there. And contentious meaning that they don't agree with each other. There is no single set of goals. There is no dictator. It's a politically contentious circumstance. And one which should not become a zero-sum game. One which should not end up with one winner and everybody else being a loser, which is a zero-sum game. This means that it needs to be negotiated. The final product needs to be negotiated. And this is very frequently the normal situation for important and complicated projects and studies, like this middle range. There are 3 ways which most frequently are applied to how to study and make a design at these big scales. They're actually small scales, technically. They're big sizes. The first one, each one of them has a liability, a problem. The first one is a commission, that you have a group of people who are different, and they do not agree with each other, and they have a set of priorities that they're willing to test. And they commission a team of people. They ask a team, a company, a government agency, a university, a team, to make a proposal. And so they make a proposal, and they may make a second or a third and a fourth, and eventually somebody presents it to the group. And the group says, no, do another one. And so they make a next line, or a next one, or a next one, and they present it again when they think it's all right. And the design has a set of priorities for decision making with each system in a different color. It has a plan. It has a program of change. It has an impact assessment, and it has cost. And the group of clients says yes. But they will never know if there's another plan which is better, because they began with only one. They began with only one, and they will never know if there's a better one. And the response to this problem, which is law in many countries, in many European countries, it needs to be a competition. And what a competition does is it says, let's take different sets of priorities and make different designs. And this could be a competition in one big company or government, or it could be several companies, each making a design. And they each make a different design. And they present their designs, and they're compared. And the client group says, we like these, but we don't like this one, we don't like this one, and we don't like this one. And so the three companies make a new design, and they present it. And then the client says, we prefer, after much argument, the client says, we prefer this one. But the reality is that one of the designs has the right politics, one has the best plan, one met the program better, a different one had the least impacts, and a different one was the least cost. And there are always, almost always, better things in these two designs which were not selected than in this one which was selected. And very frequently, the one that is selected has to join with these two or with one of them to change their design. And this is never, almost never, the final design. So that's a big problem. And the way we're going to work is different. We're going to say, let's bring these people into the design process. And because they are different, let's make the best design we can for each of them. But let's make them not privately, let's make them publicly, where everybody's idea is available to everybody else. And the first design is made privately. And we'll do that. We'll make the first design privately, but then we'll show everybody the work. And they can begin to join and begin to borrow from each other. And then we'll do an analysis at a certain time of how similar or different they are. And we'll organize negotiation in a hierarchy toward a final design, so that everybody is in the process and everybody is satisfied enough not to walk away, but not perfectly. And it's an organized way of developing a negotiated compromise that satisfies most people the most. And in the ideal world, nobody should lose totally. It's based on a framework. It happens to be the one I wrote about in my book, but it doesn't matter really which framework you use. It doesn't really matter how you work, as long as you're satisfied that it's good. My framework is in a book. It is basically not a book on how to do things, but it's a book about the questions you need to ask in order to do things like this. It's based on the premise that all ideas are public, and it's a collaboration between direct involvement by the people of the place, geographic sciences, design professions, many design professions, and information technology. And it's one of the characteristics is all the ideas are anonymous and public. So you never really know who is influencing, you could find out, but you never really know where the ideas that you want to use are coming from, but you can use them. The advantage of a framework is not that it's linear, even though it could be presented linearly, but that when you make a mistake, you know where you are and can go back. And the application in a complicated project, as you will see, is never linear. It's always, we think we should go back, let's go forward again. We think we should go back to where? To there, let's go forward again. And it changes scale. And we will be working in this workshop in 2 scales. And you will have to go back and forth in 2 scales. The synthesis is the 3rd stage in which you're deciding what goes where and when. So the project has already been organized through the 1st and the 2nd stage. The characteristics that we're using are not always present, but many of them are. And so we've figured out this project has the characteristics of a very large, complicated problem, and we might as well use it. First of all, that the problem is complicated with at least 10 systems. In other words, if you're a landscape architect and you think that for the next 30 years you're designing green infrastructure, I can tell you that you're also designing the things that depend on and interact with it. And you can't just make a plan for Belgrade that is only green infrastructure without also influencing industry, commerce, housing, energy, transport. And each of these systems has representation, which is data, process understanding, and evaluation of location. There are many ways to change and improve a system. Assume that there are 10 different ways. And that's 10 systems times 10 ways to change it, which is 100 ways. And by the time we meet again, I think on Thursday, we will have 100 different diagrams of policies and projects, because that's the homework that you're going to be doing this weekend. Each of these is a diagram, meaning it is not precise, although it could be precise. And these can be drawn, they can be partial solutions, they can be entered by GIS, or they can be rule-based and smart. There are many ways to make a design. Some are more effective than others. It depends. It depends on size, scale, information, experience, politics. There are lots of different ways. We're going to discuss 7 different ways when we meet on Thursday. And you're going to use at least 2 or 3 of them. A design is a relational synthesis in space and time of sets of system changes. Unlike sketching, unlike drawing a design, what we're doing is dealing with groups of policies and projects. They come in groups. You define them as groups. All changes feedback to update representation, process, and evaluation models. They do. If you make a change, it changes everything. And the longer the time horizon, the more that's important. Each change has impacts across all systems. If you make a change, it impacts your system, but it also impacts all other systems, usually by taking land away from other possible uses. A change design can be varied, and there can be many of them, based on different decision models, alternative scenarios, sensitivity assessments, etc. There can be 6 or more in any geodesign study. We've had one project that Brian Orland ran with about 180 group crowdsourced designs. And we have had many where there's been only one, but frequently there are about 6 to 10. And these have to be compared and negotiated, and usually, but not always, one design must evolve, and the word evolve is important. You don't know exactly where it is until you reach it. It evolves. It evolves through negotiation. And it could be then selected for action. Sometimes you don't want one design. Sometimes you want several and go through discussion before you come to one. And finally, if anything gets built or changed in the future, it updates data, process, and evaluation models. And it does it in a workflow. So these people say yes, they get people who are experts. The experts organize, and these could be anybody. Data, process models, evaluation models, and here we are in the putting it together into a design, which has a history, it has constant projects which have to be accommodated. It comes to a design, we test the impacts, and we say, is this good enough? And the answer in the workshop next week will be no. And we could go back and add data, redesign the models, reevaluate the criteria. But what we're going to do is we're going to feed back into the design itself and change the diagrams and their synthesis. Now, when you're working on a house, you have a pretty certain idea of what you want. And these methods are the best ones. These come from my book. Here, in this scale, we're dealing with uncertainty. We're not sure what's going to happen. That's why negotiation is important. We're not sure, but we have a general idea what we want. At this global scale, we may know the rules, and we may have rule-based or optimizing or agent-based models up in here, but we don't know what the design is going to be anything like. That's why the question mark. So we're in this middle zone. We're dealing with several ways of working, and we're dealing with the knowledge that the work is uncertain. We're not going to sketch. We're not going to use rule and mathematical models. We could, but we're not. We're going to use system-based diagrams and groups of diagrams to make a design. And when we change the diagrams, we'll update and improve the design iteratively and very, very efficiently using Rishi's GeoDesign Hub software, which is designed. It could be used in sketching. It could be part of a rule-based and mathematical model allocation, but it's really designed efficiently for dealing with diagrams. And we have made experiments. We've experimented with all of these 9 methods. And there's a paper that's published. And we found out some things that are very important. The different methods are better at different scales. That's fact 1, that's here. But more importantly, that the first design is never the best design. It's usually the 3rd or 4th that's the best design. And the 5th or 6th could get worse. And so you go back. So we're going to iterate at least twice and maybe 3 times next week. And you'll see how the designs get better and better and better. And so we have this hypothesis. There are not enough experiments, but we have a hypothesis that here, these simpler methods, simpler models are better. Here at the global, the more complex ones are better. And in the middle, there's a middle ground that are really the best ways to work. And it's teaching these middle ground ways that I think most of us should really be thinking about, because that's where major public policy is made. And it works in diagrams, because actually most of the time we are teaching in diagrams, in big ideas that we graphically and verbally describe, and they are not precise. You can't build from diagrams, but you can develop a strategy for change. And it's not only easier to work in diagrams, for the level of beginning work for strategy, it's better to work in diagrams than very big data and complicated data. It's better. So the software that we're using is Rishi's. It's his company, GeoDesign Hub. There's a very, very good video in the list of references for the invitation, which you've all seen. And I urge you to look at it if you haven't already. Now, Rishi, are you here listening? Do you want to take over the presentation of your software, or should I do it?
I don't think Rishi is here at the moment.
Okay, then I'm going to continue. Rishi is an engineer. He's Indian. He grew up in Japan, where collaboration is a way of life. He went to University of Michigan in America and MIT. He's a mechanical engineer, and then he worked for Honda, which does everything collaboratively, including designing a screwdriver, which he had to do. And he worked then for Microsoft, matching commercial and industrial processes to software products. And then he decided to go to University College London, where I became one of his doctoral advisors. And he came to me and he basically had read my book, and he said he thought he could do a piece of software that implemented such a workflow, and he did. He did a brilliant thesis. He now runs a company. It's a one-person company. And the software has been used hundreds of times all over the world. He gets paid as a consultant. He does not sell the software. He rents it for projects, but he gives it for free access to universities and to the IGC, the people whose schools are in the IGC. And let me digress. About half of the people in this workshop have their school as a participant in the International Geodesign Collaboration. About half of you do not. And I urge you to consider doing it, because there are many benefits and some very serious benefits. And Rishi will help you by giving advice if you're in the collaboration. But I can also tell you that there are really good short tutorial videos on every single step that we're going to go through in this workshop and that you need in a big project. The tutorials are really good. So there's a huge benefit to having you join the collaboration, and I urge you to do it. You don't have to. It's not a condition for participating with us. Typically, we can run a project in about 16 hours. And we've done real ones in about 16 hours. The most important binding constraint is the time of the participants. Working with government, it usually takes 3 months for people to clear their calendars to find a time when they can work together for a day. And you normally want them for at least 2 days. So you usually plan a project about 3 months in advance. And if you can break it into pieces like a university does in a semester with classes, it's much, much better. There are all kinds of webinars, and this is the reference to the webinars which are available to you. And this will be on a slide that you'll get from me, so you don't need to take notes. The software is what's inside the red box. The people are not in the software, they manage the software. This is a human process. But the software through API can import or export any digital data, models, visualization technology, City Engine or Esri products or open source or any of the open source materials. It can either import them or export them. It produces the designs, the timelines, the negotiation software, and the negotiation software is extremely useful and important. But you can go in and out of your existing work without relying totally on this, or the software has immediate access to global data and global models and global cost numbers. So you can be totally in Geodesign Hub and do anything that we've seen so far, or you can be totally out of Geodesign Hub and simply use it for managing your geodesign process. And by the way, you don't have to use this software to make a geodesign. There are other softwares that you may prefer to use. But in this workshop, we're going to be using Geodesign Hub, because I happen to think it's the one that does what we need the most and best, and the easiest, and the least costly. It requires various inputs, and in this case, these were made by Micheli, who's professor in Cagliari, and who has done several projects in the real world for the metropolitan area of Cagliari. This is serious business for him. For us, it's a temporary study area, but for him, it's serious business. From the upper left, there's a decision model which says some systems are more important than others. There's a study area which is square. These are all conventions of the international geodesign collaboration. The reason the study area is square is so that the political context has a context. And you can see what's across the boundary. The worst thing is not to know what's across the boundary. Then this is the relative size scaled to the study area of what needs to be changed. We need to change a lot of agriculture, green infrastructure, low density housing, industry, a smart community for incubation digital industries, energy, high density housing, and cultural protection. And this is what the government of Cagliari thinks is going to want to happen in the next 30 years. Then we have to set up for each system an evaluation model. And these are the categories of the evaluation model. And they're all below here. They're all in the same color code. And that's extremely important. These are the colors, these are the international colors that all of the schools in the collaboration are using. And these are the colors and the level of modeling that all of the schools who are working in the collaboration are using. That way we can look at each other's work and know what's going on. Red means that this is already working well, leave it alone. Stop, don't change it. Yellow means this location is inappropriate for that activity. It could be because it's hazardous, it could be because it's protected, it could be because the soils are not good enough. There's all kinds of reasons. Yellow, light green, middle green, and dark green means that it's possible to change, but it's different. Light green means it's capable of being changed in a system, but there's no infrastructure. It's land, but it's not infrastructure access. Light middle green means it's capable, it has land, and it has infrastructure. But dark green means it's capable, it has land, it's suitable, which means it has infrastructure, and it's feasible because there's actually a market demand in that area. And these are the different systems evaluation models. Then there's a simple format. It's a very simple format for testing the impact of a change in one system on all other systems. So for example, if I build houses, it could be very bad for something where I'm taking the land away from conservation or from culture or from agriculture. It may be good for me, but it's bad for other people, or it could be good for other people. And finally, there's a cost model, which you can propose for your area or use international rough information, which actually comes from Seattle, Washington, in America. And these have been prepared by Micheli and his team for this workshop. But you would have to do that. And in my teaching, I always make my students do it all. I tell my students, what are the criteria? Where's the study area? Where should we define the boundaries? How do we develop a program? Who's going to do which of these evaluations? How do we test the models? How much are these going to cost? Let's do the research and let's begin our study to make a design. And each of these might take one session or two sessions in a class. And the dynamic is we go through the evaluations, we build the diagrams of policies and projects, we put them into designs, we negotiate them, and eventually we get a final design. We know when things happen, we know the cost, and we can put it into 3D if we want to. And any one of these pieces can be changed. The dynamics, all of them, can be changed during the course of the study. Not at the end, but during the course of the study. The collaboration now has 150 schools. We've completed 96 projects. They're all over. Many of you are in these. We use these 8 systems: water, agriculture, green infrastructure, energy, transport, industry, commerce, institutions, and housing. And some are flexible. They're all in square study areas. They all deal with different scenarios. In this workshop, we're only going to do the early adopter one. And they all assess their designs according to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They all are based on several global assumptions. All of this is on the internet. And we've studied 157 system innovations, of which about 30 are applicable to this study area. We've written one book, but all these designs are on the internet that you could look at. And now we're going to study the capital city of Sardinia, which is a wonderful city and a province of Italy. And I'm going to turn it over now to Michele, who's professor at the University of Cagliari. And this is really his real project, which we're now going to use as our study. And Michele, I'm going to stop my share.
Okay, I will take it over.
Okay.
You should be able to see my screen now. Oops, sorry, I missed the proper slide. Can you see my screen now? Okay, so basically on the left you see the study area, the one in clear. Cagliari is here in the middle, and Cagliari is the main conurbation. The metropolitan city is a new administrative unit that was introduced first in 2016, a few years ago. And at the moment, the metropolitan city is developing his strategic plan. So this is a real case study. But I started studying with Carl several years ago, and we made several iterations of the study. At the moment, I'm sitting somewhere here, and the University of Cagliari is here. So basically, it's an interesting area. It's surrounded by the sea to the south. You have mountains on the east, on the west, and to the north, you have a part of the big Campidano plain that is mainly agricultural. And if you look at the map on the right, you can see the existing land uses. The dark green is mostly forest area in the mountain. Then you have the main Cagliari conurbation. It's colored in brown and yellow, and basically brown is higher density housing, and yellow is lower density. And as you can see, the conurbation is surrounded by wetlands. You have the big Santa Gila Lagoon to the west, and the Molentargius Pond, which is, by the way, a national park to the east, and the big beach, the Cagliari beach here, that's 10 kilometers of beach. To the north, then, you have a smaller town. The size is variable between 3,000 and about 10,000 people, depending on the size, and mostly agricultural land. The picture you can see now basically evoke a little bit the character of the study area. First of all, this area, as most of Sardinia, was inhabited since 3,000 years ago, since the Bronze Age. And then we have the Phoenician, and then the Romans, and then the Spanish domination later after Middle Ages. And so all the area is rich in archaeology, history, architecture, and culture and traditions. As you might know, Sardinia is also very famous, very popular in Mediterranean for the quality of its beaches. And this means also we attract quite a lot of tourism, not as much as in most developed intensely developed area in the Mediterranean, such as some location destination in Spain or Greece, but still is a tourist area, and tourism is indeed one of the main economic sector for the island. And then we have quite a lot of agriculture. This agriculture is not intensive, is not very much industrialized. So it's quite easy to find very good biology products, and you can buy everywhere, and you can buy for cheap. And then we have fisheries, and the fish market in Cagliari is quite big, and the local people love the fresh fish and seafood. And also, since 2-3 decades, Cagliari became a pole in Italy for innovation in ICT. Basically, the first internet service provider in Europe, public internet provider in Europe, started in Cagliari. So we have a kind of tradition also in innovation in technology, in ICT. And this is also a relevant growing economic sector. So with this premise, we decide to spot 10 systems that most represent the character of the area. And we decide to include water infrastructure, agriculture, green infrastructure, energy infrastructure, transport, industry and commerce, institutional services, including smart facilities for developing ICT industry, lower density housing, mixed use, which include high density housing plus services and commerce, and cultural heritage. This is also an important resource in the area. And for each of the systems, basically, we did some forecast based on a population growth forecast. We calculated that the amount of land we need to develop in each system in hectares. And these numbers you can find in the PowerPoint for review, and also are set up in the system. So you can use and check them, this target, the dimensional target, when you work on GeoDesign Hub. Okay, and this chart basically give you a graphical hints regarding the amount of land that you should transform per system. In design the development of the metropolitan city of Cagliari, since we are using the IGC guidelines, we suggest to consider technology innovation. IGC, as Carl mentioned, collected an archive of, I think, more than 100 technology innovation with regards with all the system. Among them that are available on the IGC website, we selected for you here a subset of technology innovation that we believe they are particularly relevant for the study area. Some other are less relevant. You can use this list, or I recommend also to have a look at the IGC website to have a broader view on technology innovation. So for each of the system, we develop an evaluation map following the standard legend and classification. And I will briefly introduce now the study area system by system. All the evaluation map, as we now know, use the same core code. In this case, this is the evaluation map for blue infrastructure. How to read this map? Basically, the green areas are those who are probably need development, and the darker they are, the more they need development. Especially the darker green is represent the area subject to flooding, and you can see there are some also in the conurbation. So the dark green means most urgent, in a way, priority to act, and the lower green means that there is resource, water bodies, either wetlands or rivers, where you can think about developing blue infrastructure and protecting the resources. In this case, we don't have the red areas. So for the water infrastructure in the study area, the main objective are reducing flood risk and protect water bodies. For agriculture, again, we don't have red. We have the yellow area are either water bodies or built areas or mountain areas, very steepy with a forest land use. And the green is the left part. The darker the green, the better the soil, the most suitable for agricultural production. And in this case, we want to innovate agriculture. For example, we have some risk of drought, so saving water is a good idea, and new technology can help on this. And also, we want to develop sustainable tourism related to the agricultural production, so like agritourism and biological production, food production. Green infrastructure. You see some big red patches. These are the areas in the mountain and in the wetland, basically, in the wetlands where natural resources are working well, are not much affected by anthropogenic activities, and basically are in equilibrium. So the main strategy here should be to connect the patches passing through the green zone that are more suitable to developing further green infrastructure. And the yellow again is either the built areas, mostly the built on in artificial land uses that are not suitable clearly for developing green infrastructure. Energy infrastructure. In red, you see the main production and transformation plant. In yellow, again, the not feasible area, either in the mountain or in the water bodies. And in green, the possible way where it's suitable to create connection or other infrastructure. And here the objective is moving towards green energy production mostly. Transportation. The transportation evaluation map, as you can see from this pattern, is based on the road network, and some segment of the road network are red, meaning that the level of service is good, is currently good, and probably will be good in the future. While the green segment are the existing road infrastructure that with a better level of service and should be improved. But furthermore, you have other green areas where it's possible to build new infrastructure, and you can think about building new road segment or axis, maybe a metro outside the city. And you can think about also about soft mobility in terms of building active traveling infrastructure like cycling path, maybe connecting the natural areas or the cultural heritage and the like.
Make sure you mention the ring road. Go back to the ring road.
Yeah, sorry. One important thing is that the main conurbation is here around Cagliari. The population is growing, so probably it's a good idea to. There is a small ring road from the past, but you see it's in green because it's not the level of service is not anymore sufficient. So probably a good idea should be thinking about finding a place for a new and larger ring road, especially now that 17 municipalities in the whole area have to connect together and be more accessible. Industry and commerce, mostly industry here. You see the red area to the west, you have the biggest industrial areas. Then further south, there is a big oil refinery on the coast. And these are the major heavy industry areas. And then you have here, starting from the outskirts of Cagliari and going to the north, this is along the main highway going to the far north in Sardinia, where you can find light industry and commerce, and a little bit smaller other nodes around the main conurbation. Institutional and smart service, you can see the major area here are the campuses area, and there is basically research and development. There is a big research center also in the southwest in the municipality of Pula, just at the base of the mountain. And basically the objective here is to create a big new smart center that can be inserted in the network with the existing one. Lower density housing. This is a quite controversial system. Why? Because for the first time now, 17 municipalities are planning together at the metropolitan scale. But in the long planning tradition in the area, each municipality was used to design in the local land use plan their own new residential low density areas. And this is one of the major issues in designing a local master plan. But now that they need to plan together as a metropolitan city, looking at this map, is easy to realize that actually the suitable areas for low density, further low density development, residential development, are not everywhere. So this can be a contentious system among the local design teams. Mixed use, high density housing plus services and retails. These are concentrated mostly in the city center of Cagliari and a little bit in the municipality around Cagliari. And this is quite unbalanced. As you can see in the map, there is not much mixed use outside the main conurbation. So this is probably an issue. Some balance should be thought about. Last but not least, as I mentioned, the area is rich in cultural heritage. And basically the green area indicate where there is a higher density of resources in terms of archaeological and historical sites and architectural sites. And the red part are mostly the historic center. There are all, in the majority of the municipalities, the historic center date back several centuries. So it's rich in architecture. And then there is some industrial archaeology in the Santa Gila wetland and in the Molentarger pond. They are both former salt production farm. And other than that, we have a lot of resources. They are not very accessible, not connected. They are under risk of degradation. So the main objective is to safeguard them and possibly make them accessible. And you can also relate these to the transport, for example, to cycling path in some area to connect to the archaeological
Michele, talk about the agricultural villages. Talk about briefly the agricultural villages to the north.
I can probably mention that when we see the teams.
Okay.
Okay, so now the teams. All of you belong to a teams. There are 4 global teams, meaning that the global teams are interested in developing the whole areas. And then there are 4 local teams, and the local teams are, you can see the boundaries of the 4 local teams in the map. They are interested mostly in developing within their boundaries. So they are more local interest, and this is why we are working kind of 2 scales. And the metro teams basically represent the metropolitan city. Yeah.
Let me interrupt. The number 1 metro means that it's the same number 1 on the list of participants. So this is the team that's coordinated by Francesco, and it has Elena, Nilgul, Luna, and Astrid on it. So you can tell which you are by assignment from the number of these 8 teams and the number on the list of participants in the workshop. Okay.
And again, we will get this PowerPoint as soon as we finish, so you can figure it out where you are. So the metro is the Metropolitan Authority, and the main aim of the Metropolitan Authority is to achieve balanced development in all the area. And more specifically, they want to improve transportation so that all the area is accessible equally or in a balanced way. The water infrastructure, which sometimes is not functioning well, both in terms of hydrological risk and also in the water supply and storage. They want to turn the energy production green as much as they can, and also they want to improve tourism. Tourism is we have tourism, but again, it's not very intense. So there is more, and it is one of the main actually economic resources for the people living in the island. Then we have the developers. The developers are also interested in all the area, and they want to build more housing. They want, of course, to stimulate economy to grow, and they mainly want to work on housing, industry, smart services, so technology innovation, and tourism. Then we have the green. This team is more protection or conservation oriented. They want to develop tourism by a more sustainable way, maybe more sustainable than the developers probably. So they are interested in tourism. They want to protect blue and green infrastructure as well as cultural heritage in order to create comprehensive, let's say, thorough green infrastructure and develop so that to have ecosystem services. And then we have the farmers. The farmers want to improve the agricultural production. Also, they want to protect, you know, farmers all in Europe, they are suffering now for climate change. There is scarcity of water. In many areas, the soil is more dry. So technology innovation is very important in this perspective. And agriculture is in the main agricultural area are in the northwest, and in a smaller area, but with very good high quality agricultural production in the southwest. Was this what you meant, Carl, earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the farmers wants to innovate in technology to improve the production of agri-food. For example, there's a big area where they produce biology artichoke, and they sell for very, very cheap for kilos. But the idea is to also to put them in a jar in olive oil and sell high quality product, higher value product for a higher price. And this could help economy. Also, they want to introduce, as I mentioned, technology to improve farming. And also they see complementary development in agrotourism related to their agricultural production. And then there are the local teams. The Cagliari teams, Cagliari again is the capital, is the major conurbation. And in history, they always had a leading role in the highland and in the area, and they want to maintain this leading role, basically, and economic and power role. Then in the southeast here, there are many beaches on the coast, and there is the major settlement is Quarto Sant'Elena here. The municipality alone hosts about 90,000 people. The overall population of the area is 430,000 people. About 200,000 people live in Cagliari, 90,000 people in Quarto Sant'Elena. Quarto Sant'Elena is a main conurbation, and then there is a low density residential area all along the coast. But this was developed in the last three or four decades, without a real plan. So sometimes you have illegal building, infrastructure, basic residential infrastructure are very poor. So this coastal area need to be requalified mostly. And they have archaeology as well, and they have beaches, so they want to develop also tourism. In the northwest, this area hosts both the industrial area near the lagoon, but also in the backyard they have a lot of agricultural land and suitable, very good soil. So this is where there will be probably higher development in both in industry and agriculture. In both cases, it's not a quantitative development. It's mostly they want to work in innovation, towards innovation. And last but not least, the southwest, they have the big oil refinery. They have a lot of archaeology. They have a very high quality agricultural production, as I mentioned. They have big part of the area is a mountain, so it's not very accessible for the majority of users. But we can think about green infrastructure. They have a problem of accessibility. Going from Cagliari to Pula, it's about 40 kilometers, and you need probably 40 to 50 minutes at the moment. This is not really good level of services. Probably we can reduce to the half the time needed to move from Pula to the center, and this should be improved. Okay, either with a metro line or with a new road or the like. And also the southwest is also probably the most developed area in terms of tourism. It's the longest history, a lot of second houses, but also a lot of hotels and wonderful beaches as well. Okay, I think it is all about the study area. So I will unshare my screen and give the floor back to Carl.
Okay. I need to be able to share my screen now.
Yeah.
And where is my screen? Here's my screen. Let me make it bigger.
Hey.
Oh, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. I want my screen.
It was your screen. Probably you were still on the slide where you stopped. Where you stopped.
Okay, let me take you very quickly now through what we're going to be doing so you know where we're going, and then we're going to get you into the software and start to learn how to make diagrams and think about that. So Michele has shown you some of the data. He's gone through the processes. He's shown you the evaluation models. And now we're going to deal with the change models, and we're going to make the diagrams. We're going to test a design. We're going to test the impacts. We're going to decide if it's good enough, and it's not going to be good enough. We're going to definitely iterate a second time through the design, and probably during the course of it, change scale, because everybody will see what everybody is doing. We'll make a second set of impact assessments. We'll make a second assessment of the decision model. We may make a third design depending upon how efficiently the teams work. Then we'll put you together with at least one other team, and you'll do a negotiation. And if we have time, we'll repeat that process and make a second negotiation and even a third negotiation. And then we'll have a final design to present to each other. You'll see the evaluation. You'll be making diagrams of policies and projects, each of which is different, color-coded, and with a number. There are different strategies which we will discuss at the beginning of the workshop next week. We'll each make a set of designs. We'll compare the designs. We'll negotiate the designs. We'll present the designs. And we'll look at the history of the designs from right to left and see how they developed between the first and the second design. We'll work for 4 hours, and there'll be an exercise at the end of this. There'll be an exercise for each team as soon as we learn how to make the diagrams. Now, let's go, and I'm going to stop sharing. And Michele, let's go into the sandbox.
Okay, I already copied in the chat. You can find the link to the sandbox. Just let me know. All of you should have already an account on GeoDesign Hub, but if some of you haven't registered yet, please let me know now.
Everybody's in GeoDesign Hub.
Okay, so the only all you can have to do is copy the link in the okay, someone did not, so I will briefly show how to do it. Just let me find my screen. Okay, let me share my screen here. Can you see my screen now? I will just log out from GeoDesign Hub. Okay. If you go to www.geodesignhub.com, you go to the main page. you need to log in. Click
Okay.
login, top right. This is automatic. No, sorry, this is automatic. I should change the browser to another one. Let me find. Okay, just a second. Let me change my screen and let me share the new one. Okay, now I just changed browser, so I don't have a register account on this browser. So you need to write your email, choose a password. No, sorry, sign up for a new account. The bottom of the page, sign up for a new account. You choose your username. Probably your surname is fine. Use only small letters, no capital letters or no special character, possibly. Just your surname is fine. Your email, you set a password, digit a code, and you are registered, and you go in, okay? So now I will go back to my other browser.
While you're doing that, Michele, those of you who noticed that Michele is using the software in Italian, the software is machine translatable into almost every major language. So you can use the software and teach in it in whatever language you're most comfortable in using. It doesn't have to be the English version.
Basically, in the administration panel, you can choose the language. And actually, in your account page, I think you can choose, every one of you can choose the preferred language. If you go to edit profile, you can find the language. Now I'm in the English version. On the other browser, I was on Google Chrome, and the automatic translation was set up, but otherwise is in English. So when you create an account, you go in and you have the list of the project you already joined. When you sign up for the first time, this is empty. You have only the create project option. So in order to join the project, you open another window, cut and paste the link that I wrote in the chat, and then you will see the project listed here. I have many. You will have only IGC, Cagliari 2020, Sandbox, Workshop 2, WS2, okay? Please let me know if someone has not come to this point yet.
Okay, and then Michele, I'll share my screen and take it up to the point of making a diagram.
Okay.
And I need to
another tip to everybody: if you read the link to joining a project, it has a standard route, www.geodesignhub.com/p/join/ and then you have 3 characters, and basically the 3 character is the code that give you access to the specific project. So at the end of the meeting today, I will give you a second link to enter the real project. But now we will do some training and practice on the interface in the sandbox. That is pretty much the same as the real project, but it's the place where we can make mistake. And then after we learn, we can go to the real project and work more meaningfully.
So if I'm now sharing my screen, and Michele, can you see my screen?
Not yet?
Not yet. That's not good. Just a minute. I need to share my screen. And what's going on here? I need to share my screen.
Go back on Zoom.
I'm now seeing it, but it's not working. Do you? My screen is not working. Why is my screen not working? I don't know why my screen is not working. I need to share my screen. There it is.
Is the frame?
There it is.
Okay, it's coming.
Okay.
Here we are.
Okay, so I'm now in the sandbox. Everybody, Everybody needs to be in the sandbox with me. Be in the sandbox. And what you need to do is you need to scroll down the sandbox to where you see boundaries, constraints, and the site evaluations. Is that now okay for almost everybody?
Carl, it's Richard here.
Yes.
Because I've done this before, I've just added in an agricultural diagram if you want to make use of that.
No, I'm going to teach people how to do it in the first place, so it's all right.
Okay.
But basically, can you see my screen? Richard?
Yes, Carl, we can.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So for those, this is, some of you are experienced, but some of you are beginners, and this is for the beginners. The function called boundaries allows you to set the working boundaries. What you see here is the default boundary, which is all of Cagliari, but we can change the boundary. We can change the boundaries to any of the local areas so that you're only seeing the local areas. And that allows a decentralized, geographically decentralized study to be made where each team is responsible for a different part. We can actually do this for the local groups in this workshop.
Yeah, I think now the boundaries are not set up yet in the sandbox, but you will find in the real project.
They'll be in the real project. The constraints is to be only used in special conditions, but it allows you to identify geographically places that under no circumstances are changed. And these areas, like maybe cemeteries, the cathedral, the national park, these can't even be improved. They will be removed from everything that you do for the rest of the project. So it's, you don't usually use this, but you can under circumstances. Maybe it's a military base. Maybe it's an archaeological site. I don't know. The most important things are the evaluation models. There's one for every system. And the most important thing of that is that you can explore the evaluations. So watch what I'm doing. I'm going to the bottom. I'm pressing explore evaluations. And this map comes up. First of all, the map can be zoomed. It can be zoomed out to all of Sardinia. It can be zoomed to great detail at the Cagliari level. It has a series of additional data. It has a satellite map. It has the settlements. I'm going to remove the satellite map. It has the settlements. It has the rivers. It has the major roads. And it has the existing land use. I'm now going to remove these. It also has all of the evaluation models. For example, if I was the developers, I might want to know where transport, commerce and industry, institutions, high density housing, and low density housing are attractive. And it's very clear that these areas here are very, very attractive to all kinds of development. And so are these areas in Pula. But this is going to be more difficult. This is going to be much more difficult. And if I were the Greens, I might want to know where the developers want to be, but I might also want to know where the cultural, green infrastructure, water infrastructure, and cultural. Yes, cultural, green, water, energy, and agriculture might be. So these are the areas that are the most prone to protection and development in the green landscape. And I know that there's going to be a war right over here between those two. So whoever gets there first is in a very interesting position in the negotiation. So this idea that you can always zoom in, you can always look at overlays, and you can always go back into the evaluations is very, very important. In the real project, you will see a button called Update Evaluations. And at any time in your design or at the end of a time stage, you can update the evaluation models, and it will recognize the design that you have and assume it's built and change the pattern. But this is the sandbox. And the sandbox is really the most useful thing for learning how to make a diagram. And now I'm going to turn it over to Michele, who's going to take you through a series of exercises on how to make and edit a diagram in the sandbox. And then I'm going to end this piece of the workshop with an exercise that everybody has to participate in between now and Monday. It will take no more than 1 hour, but it's something that we need, which is to make the new diagrams. Okay, Michele, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
I got the screen already.
Okay.
Okay, I see some of you already registered the project, maybe not all of you.
It's very important that they do that.
So now, okay, we have the list of evaluation map, one per system, and basically each map identify a column. If you scroll down a bit, you see the diagram. This is like a table or a matrix organized by column. And each column hosts diagram of the same color, because all the projects in one system are of the same color, and this simplifies a lot. It's a common language that everybody can learn very fast. So if I want to add in the as by the class introduction, the workflow, see a first phase where we work on single project. We propose ideas and we share ideas with others. And in the second phase, we will basically select these ideas, the one we like, to create an integrated project. So let's focus on how to create single diagrams representing a project or a policy. Let's imagine I want to create a new residential area. So first of all, I need to identify the proper system. New residential low density area, I go to low density housing system. I'm in the column, in the proper column. I click to add. When I click add, I'm preparing to add a new diagram, and I have to decide whether I want a project or a policy. So let's start with a project. I click add, I select project, and the first window appears where I have to describe the main attributes of the project. Here I want a new condos with green roofs. Okay, the name must be meaningful, not only and descriptive and meaningful, not only to myself, but also to the other, because actually I'm proposing this project idea. I want sell it to the other, hopefully. So I need to make a description. You see, I wrote alpha line. I still have 27 characters. Try to express meaningful names for your project. New condos with green roof, I think, is something that everybody can understand. I could add the location so that the other, when they see the matrix, can understand better immediately where the projects are. Then I have to choose the type of funding. In this case, is private funding. And I have to choose it can be a line or a polygon. In most cases, it will be a polygon, unless it is a linear infrastructure. So I will choose polygon. If I want, I can set up the time for the development of the project, starting and ending time. Optionally, I can add a cost for the project. In this case, I can use the parameter already set up in the system, and the system will calculate the area of my diagram and multiply for a cost per hectare. Or better, if I have an idea about the total cost, I can put, like here, I don't know, 5 million euro. Okay, and then I click add diagram. When I completed the first window, basically one tile is added to the matrix, and immediately I get the geographical windows in order to identify the area. At this point, I need to find a suitable area for a condos, so I go and activate, switch on the low density housing map. I zoom. I found a dark green preferably. Let's say I want to make money out of it. I want to choose most suitable area near the existing settlement, dark green. When I'm ready, when I found the area, I can use the satellite also here if I want to understand exactly where I am. Okay. When I found the proper area, I can click on Edit Map and I activate the Add Feature button. Now, listen carefully. This is very simple, but at the first time maybe tricky. So when you click Add Feature, you start selecting the first node of the polygon, the second, the third, how many nodes you may like. And then you see the diagram is still in editing. To close the editing, I go to the first node and click in the first node. As soon as I click in the first node, the diagram takes the color of the system, and also I see the dimension, the full area, and the segment of the perimeter. So I can have an idea. Maybe it is too big. I can reduce a little bit, change shape. Okay. I can add one more node here if I click on the edge. Okay. It's not working now. Okay, I can save the diagram, and then if I want, I can edit again. I can delete one node. I can add more node. Add node not working at the moment. Maybe it's just I should refresh. But anyway, okay. And now I'm adding more node. And then I save. When I save, I close the graphical window and I see my diagram. Okay. New condos with green roof. This is my diagram. I can review. If I want to go back and cancel, I can edit again. I can change the shape again at a later stage. And if I want to completely delete the diagram, maybe because I want to change area, I want to move a little bit south, I can press Control on the keyboard, click on the diagram. In Mac is Command and click. In Windows, Control and click. And then I can add another feature in a better area again. Okay? And edit as many times as I want. I can edit only my own diagram, the diagram that I created. I cannot edit the diagram from others. Okay, now, so please everybody try to create. You choose depending on what kind of project you want to do, you choose the relevant system. Please be careful to associate the right project to the right system. A road in transport, a condos in low density housing, a green corridor in green infrastructure and the like. Then you add a diagram, you draw a diagram, and you save a diagram.
Everybody,
project and polygons.
everybody should make one project and then make one policy.
The difference, there are two differences between, there is a semantic difference and a practical difference between project and policy. Okay, the semantic is very intuitive. Project is something physical. A policy is something a regulation, protection, constraint, etc. So usually policy tend to be bigger, but the rule here is try to make policy diagram only in the areas where the policy is more relevant. Don't make big policy in the whole area. Try to select the area where the policy is more appropriate. The practical difference is that the projects are taken into account where the system calculates impact. This is something that we will see in next week. While the policies are not.
One other thing, please. Don't put more than one polygon in any diagram. Don't make compound diagrams. One polygon, one diagram. You seem to have a lot of people who are not saving their diagrams. Why is this?
Okay, many people, I can see now that many people created the metadata in the first windows. Now you should click on the tile of your project. The name looks meaningful. Peri-urban park, new urban park, central park, this is fine. Project agricultural land from alternative use. Yeah, maybe okay. Coastal protection, fine. So now click on the tile of your diagram in order to open the geographical windows, the GeoBrowser, and then edit and draw your diagram, if you haven't done yet. Okay.
Good.
New urban park, I can review your diagram, I cannot edit your diagram.
We will be able to do it in the real project, though. We can copy and edit in the real project.
I can see many of you are still drawing. Luna, I'm looking at your diagram. This is a policy, but I cannot see the name. You can go back to your diagram, click on it, and edit the name. Because now I see a policy in agriculture, but I cannot understand what it is.
Oh, somebody's done a linear one.
We have a ring road.
Jana.
Okay, this also has a
No, that should be linear.
diagram transform.
What does it mean?
The name is not meaningful. So please let us know through the name, edit the name, and let us know what this dark area is.
That transportation very frequently is a linear object, not a polygon.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah.
And a linear plan has to begin and end with a double click at the end to twice click the last place on the line.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, in this case, someone did a very detailed job using a polygon, trying to follow the road. This is not necessary. It's better to use the line for the purpose.
Because Francesco, if you use the line, we can buffer the line by GIS. Much easier to use the line and buffer it through GIS inside GeoDesign Hub.
Yes, okay.
Okay. If you look at this diagram, transport number 1, you see this is very detailed and polygonal. This has a different origin. I didn't draw by hand. It takes too much time in the workflow of the workshop that is fast and intense. But I can load a shapefile. If I have a shapefile, I can of a previous project, I can load it in the system. This is another option, but most frequently we draw our diagram and we do it qualitatively, as Carl said, very fast.
Okay.
Any questions so far? Is anyone having trouble in building diagram, or are you getting familiar with the interface?
Has everybody made at least one diagram at this point? Is there anybody who has not made one diagram? We need to know this. Okay. All right. Michele?
Yeah.
Right.
Shall I show a synthesis?
Okay, just a minute from Luna. All right. Luna says she's still facing some trouble editing.
Okay.
Luna,
I guess Luna is trying to change the name of her diagram.
I see.
You can use the microphone, Luna. What kind of issue are you having?
To Laura, it's Carl. I will go back to the site to identifying the areas and the groups. I will do that as soon as we're finished with this phase of the exercise. I will end the discussion today with the team maps, with the team lists and the task that everybody has to deal with.
Thank you, Carl.
By the way, those of you who are listening, you can see what's happening. The idea that you're looking at chat at the same time as a set of maps and teaching, it's not as good as being in a classroom where you can blow a whistle or yell and scream like I do in a workshop. This has to be done over the technology, and it's slower, and it can only be one conversation at a time. Whereas I'm experienced to have 3 conversations at the same time, but this can't be done here easily. Is there anybody else who's had fundamental difficulties in doing this? Is Luna now getting solved? Michele, do you know?
I cannot see the chat actually because I'm sharing my screen.
Okay. Luna, are you okay now, or do you still need help? Luna? Put on your microphone, Luna. Oh, you're okay. That's very good. Don't worry about deleting Wang now. It's not a crucial thing. We're going to do it again next week when we meet. Don't worry about that. Michele, I propose that you now do something different. And that is that you make a design and then I'll make a comment and we'll change the design.
Okay. So in order to make a design or a synthesis, I will work integrating different projects. In order to integrate different projects, I have just to select those that I like. I will go kind of random now. I will pick on the bottom of each tile of the diagram that I like, and this is to include those diagrams in the design, in my first design.
Take a lot of the green ones and a lot of the yellow ones, Michele, please.
Yeah. Let's say I can choose all of the green and all of the yellow. So once I have selected my diagrams, the one I like, I can, of course, I go and review. I'm doing fast now just to show how the system, the platform work, but then you can choose the meaningful diagram to you. If you scroll down, you can see all the diagram. Okay, maybe I can zoom a little bit. Okay. So this is my first design, and I'm sure Carl will notice something that is not working well here. What
I know one that isn't working well.
Maybe this one?
This one up here in the upper northeastern corner, much of it is in a protected zone. And I think that that project needs to be removed.
And it is probably too big. It's probably much bigger than the target for the whole system.
Much too big.
I can click on it. This is LDH9. So I can go back to the matrix of diagrams and I can find it, LDH number 9, and I just unselect that. And I go down back and
it's gone.
This one is also very big and is probably cross-cutting areas with different, but urban, it is part of it. This is meaningless because you see you have residential area in the lagoon. This is probably not possible or very unlikely to be feasible. So I can identify these, LDH number 6. Also the name here is not clear, should be improved. So I go back, LDH numbers, look for LDH number 6 and unselect it. Okay. And then down again.
Fine, very good. All right, so the process of making groups of diagrams, having a large number, and then combining them with strategies is a very good one. There's a very interesting strategy, and that is put all of the diagrams together, all of them, and make your design not by adding diagrams, but by removing diagrams. It's one of the 7 different strategies for how to work with multiple sets of diagrams. All right, so
Can I show this, Carl, what you already said?
Yeah.
So now I go back, I can select all the column from the top of the column, select all. I will do for all the systems.
imagine that these are diagrams that you have done with thought, slowly, or you've asked various offices in your government to propose ideas. And you're getting ideas from all kinds of people, but you're putting them in one structure, in one language.
So maybe I should refresh.
You do have to refresh.
Yeah. When you see the green rectangle on the top of the page, it means that, that your client is exchanging data with a server and syncing. So sometimes, depending on the connection, the quality of the connection, it may take some time. If something seems not to work properly, it's probably a problem. You have to refresh the browser page in order to update the syncing. Okay. So there are some. Still, I cannot see.
The answer, Jing Sha, the answer is yes. In the real project, you can change a project from one system to another. It will work. That is something you cannot do in the sandbox, but you can do when we move to the real project.
What do you mean? I didn't get, sorry.
One of the chats asked whether you can change a diagram from one system to another, and the answer is you can.
Are you sure, Carl? I'm not sure about it.
I saw that with Rishi this past week.
Okay, okay, so it's probably, yeah, okay, the interface is changing often, so you can probably do it, okay.
The best thing to do is to ignore that operation and to just redraw it. That's the easiest way.
Yeah.
All right, so the idea that you go and look at all the projects at the same time is a very useful idea, because if these are all sensible projects, you can say, look, let's erase.
We see these two very big, we don't like them, so we can go back and delete those, unselect. And then you can zoom, we can detect more conflict or something not working properly, or different things that are probably too much in the area, and then You can, what is this? Okay. New urban park. Okay, I like it. Maybe, what is this? Green infrastructure. Okay, together they goes well. What is this? Urban park. Another, maybe 2 parks in this area is too much. Maybe I can.
Or it's built on a highway, which I can see already. Keep, Michele, put on the existing land use. Existing land use. And you'll see that that park is built on an existing, that little triangle is built on an existing industrial area.
Yeah, so this is not.
That means that you need to use the evaluation maps, and you need to use the other data before you make a good diagram in the real project. That's why we have the sandbox. All right? Making a diagram has to be an intelligent diagram. It has to be one that is potentially usable in a design for the future.
Okay,
Use
can I show you one more example?
Sure.
Let's go to, we want to create an outdoor archaeological park. So we go to culture. I see that in culture there are a lot of policy, probably some more project in this case. So I want to add a new project. This outdoor museum, little park museum, archaeological. I choose polygon, add diagram. Oh, sorry, I didn't put the name. Polygon. Okay, so now I switch on the culture evaluation map, and now I have to find a suitable map. Look, if we work with stakeholders, local people from the municipality, decision maker, they may look less at the evaluation map because they know very well their land. But in our case, as you don't know very much the area, the best advice, and this is what we do usually with students, is just to give a little bit stricter rule and say, just use the evaluation map and you will not make big mistake. So now I want to find a suitable area for an archaeological park where I should go to the dark green. Can be either here, but this is very close to the oil refinery. Maybe it's not the best. So maybe I can decide to go here. I go here in the dark green, and then maybe at this point I put a satellite to understand better where I am. I know that in this area is dark green, so it means there are many archaeological sites here. There is very high density, and then at this point I can edit my map. Look at the satellite, add feature, okay, oops. And then I check the area. This is in square meter. I can look at the PowerPoint that we will be sending after this meeting, check the target, and I can understand whether this is maybe too big or too small, okay?
Good.
And save.
Good.
So you can, after the meeting, you can do a little bit of more training in the sandbox, but then, Carl, you want to explain what to do for the...
I want to share my screen now, okay?
I'm unsharing mine. Okay, you can go.
I'm sharing mine, and which of mine I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go. All right, so what have we done? What happened just then? Just a minute.
Okay.
Just a minute. Yeah, no, I want to just go back briefly.
Okay.
I want to go briefly back to here on my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, Carl.
Okay. So what have we done? The local teams can work at the whole region scale, but they're really interested in the development of their small area. The regional teams have the responsibility for the whole. Don't underestimate the importance of the site evaluations. They're really useful information. Don't underestimate the importance of the maps on the upper right-hand corner that are overlays. You're going to make a series of diagrams. There'll be more than 100 of them when we meet next. I'm going to be discussing different strategies of how to attack the design problem. They're very different. And you're going to have to decide this as a team on the next time we meet as a group. We're going to be making designs, negotiating designs, presenting designs, and looking at the history of how they developed. It's going to be a 4-hour meeting. Don't be late, be early so that we can reorganize. This is the task for each team. The aim is not to make a design by the team, but for every system, each team must make at least one diagram of a policy or a project which are in your team's interest, which you think your team would be interested in. And that's for every system. Each design has to be in every system. No diagram should exceed the target for that system. The diagram should not be compound. It should only have one polygon or linear element. If you need, for example, 3 areas of low density housing, which is a good idea, make 3 separate diagrams. It should be labeled by its content. If I don't understand it, I will never use it. And it's your interest to make me want to use your diagram. If the diagram is an innovation, use the code so we know what you've done. You need to meet as a team separately on Skype or Zoom or whatever the coordinator decides. You need to decide who makes which diagrams, and they'll be in the real project, which Michele will link you into now. They must be finished. They must be finished in the real project, not in the sandbox. By Monday, June 22nd, next Monday, at noon, my time and Rishi's time in London and in Dublin. And then join the workshop session before the starting time so that we can reorganize if needed. And if you know that you cannot attend the workshop, please inform me in my private Harvard email as soon as possible so that I can know that you're absent and reorganize the team that you're in. And that's really a very, very important thing as a courtesy. Now, I was asked about the teams. So I'm going to quickly go back to the teams and basically say who's which team. Each team has a number. Each team has a number. So if you're in team number, wait, this is, hold on a second.
It is not the old PowerPoint.
I know, it's the wrong PowerPoint, but at the beginning, wait, it is the wrong PowerPoint. Damn it, just a minute, just a minute.
Shall I share mine?
No, I have it here.
Okay. In the meantime, please note that I already copied the link of the real project on the chat. So if you haven't done yet, please join also the real project.
And this is the European and America's team. And this is the list of teams. So Laura, you're in team 7. And this is a list of teams which I sent everybody in an email, and it'll be on the PowerPoint, which I now will send to everybody. So you've got Mohammed, Patricia, and Zaki in your team.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. So the coordinator, we've selected people as coordinators who at least have worked with us before. I hope I've done that. And what they're going to need to do is have a short meeting on Zoom or on Skype with their team, decide who is going to do what. It does not have to be a coordinated design. It's what you as an individual consultant to the study think is a good idea, but divide the systems among the people. That's a very obvious thing. So everybody does 2 and some people do 3. And you can do it in a short amount of time, but make diagrams that you're prepared to realize that we all know who made the diagrams. And somebody may ask you what you were thinking. So you really have to have a diagram that makes some sense, knowing that other people are making the same kinds of diagrams. Are there any questions? Because we've now come to the end of this phase of the workshop. And it's a few minutes before 3 o'clock as planned. And you realize, those of us who teach, you realize that 2 hours is a long time. It's a long time. And if we had more time, that would be good, but we don't want to have more time. We're trying to see what can we do in a short amount of time. So if we've taught you how to make a diagram, and we've taught you the structure, and we give you the references back in the PowerPoint, I think everybody should be able to contribute 2 reasonable diagrams to the enterprise, and we'll have 100 diagrams when we begin the synthesis exercise and the strategies of synthesis when we meet next time. Are there any questions at this point?
And maybe it would be useful actually to go back to the site to see some of the features of the particular site. There was a brief presentation by Michele that maybe it would be helpful, at least to me, to understand what are the needs of the area.
The needs are on the PowerPoint. I'll move
okay.
No, just a minute. I respect the question, but let me show you what we did. I really do respect the question, but let me show you how we set this up. We set this up so that there's a list of requirements. There's a list of innovations which they're really interested in Cagliari. Each of these is on the collaborative IGC website with a very detailed explanation of what's meant. That's the evaluation models. These are if you look at the first, water infrastructure, they're interested in water retention. They have 2 big problems: flood risk and protecting water supply. The next one is they're interested in these innovations. They want smart technical agriculture and agro-food tourism. So we've tried to give you the clues inside the evaluation maps in the PowerPoint for each of the systems.
Okay.
And if you have a special question, let me answer this in a technological age. There are 20 websites about Cagliari and its region. There's nothing that says you can't look at other websites related to these areas. Each village and each town has its own website. So we're trying to simplify it, but there's no reason you can't look further. And if you really have a question, email or Skype me or Skype Michele. But we have to still run 2 more workshops today and in the next week. So my answer to you is not a polite, friendly, personal answer. It's we have to teach ourselves how to use the internet to get the answers to obvious questions. And it's clear you don't know the area. I know that. But we can't teach you about the area in person anymore. We have to say to you, we're giving you some clues, and you have to do the best job you can. And then when we see the work, then we may make some comments. But the first move has to be made through the internet, especially if you've got a large group of people in the workshop. I'm giving you an answer which is not the same answer I would have given you a year ago. In which case I would have said, of course I'll explain to you what I know. But now I can't explain to you what I know because I have to explain it in 30 languages to 30 people. A very different problem. And I hope that that's a satisfactory answer. But that's the answer that I'm going to be forced to give. Because with one student or participant in a workshop, I spend the time. But with 30, I can't spend the time. It's a real problem, but it's one of those things we just have to figure out strategies for. And the strategy that we figured out was, let's give people with the evaluation map a clue. They know what team they're on. They have a clue as to what may be more important than other things. And we need the diagrams. And I hope that that's a satisfactory answer, because I would find it a very difficult answer to receive. But in fact is the answer that I'm giving in as friendly a way as I can make it clear. But we're all going to be in this position, at least some of us are already. All of us will be in this position as teachers in the next, in the next months, I would guess, many of us.
If I can comment this, I did this kind of workshop live with my students several times, and doing it, in the last 2 years, I did it one time in one day, about 7-8 hours, and the previous year in 5 sessions of 3 hours. So in such a short time, there is not really time to go very much into the details. And my students don't know very well the area. And my students don't know what a regional plan is. And they don't know the technology when they start. But in such a short time, usually, they understand the technology, they understand what a plan is, and they understand, and they are able to do, not all of them, but many are able to do a meaningful design eventually. So.
But there's another issue of teaching here. The idea that the first design is not the best design and it's not the latest design is very important. If people recognize that, what they need to do is make a first design and use that design as the basis of the discussion of whether it's a good issue, as opposed to doing the discussion before you make the design. I once visited a school in which the school had 1-year projects. My school at that time had 3-week projects. But they had a 1-year project, and I visited this school. It was in Germany in April. And in April, the students were still discussing what the project should be. They had never done anything other than talk. And I think that if they make a first design cleverly, and you'll see this next week, you'll see this after the first 45 minutes, you'll see that that design is the basis of the real discussion to make it better. And you'll see how the design leads the discussion rather than the discussion leads the design, even in an unfamiliar area. At least you'll try it that way. But that's the way it is. So now, Michele and I have one more workshop to do this afternoon. So we're going to end the workshop session now, and we look forward to seeing you next week as planned. But if there's any emergency or any real serious problem, don't hesitate to email me, and don't hesitate to email Michele. But if we both get the email, I'll try to answer it before Michele does, because he's busier than I am. Okay? Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing your diagrams on Monday, London time. But now, Michele, we have to get them into the real project.
I already copied, some of them are already in.
Okay.
I copied the link. If I can copy it again, maybe now the chart is evolving, I will copy it.
I'm going to stop sharing.
One more time. Okay. Let me check the project. I see some of you are already in the project, but not all of you. So please, I would advise to join the project now. IGC Cagliari 2020 WS2. This is the real.
Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I think that I can see the project. I'm inside the project, but I don't see my icon in the just beneath the title. I don't see myself there, but I am inside.
Okay, then it's a problem of syncing. So it should be okay.
Thinking and refreshing. If you refresh, if you go out of it tonight and you come back in tomorrow, you'll be in with your icon.
Before leaving, please cut and paste from the chat the link if you haven't done yet.
Elena, is your system working well enough in Moscow, in Russia? Your
Yes.
It is working, Elena? Elena, your microphone is off.
She wrote yes in the chat, yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, Laura, you're okay? Okay, Bayana, you're fine? That's fine. Now, I still don't see Shlomit, and I still don't see Peter. Did Peter make it into the session? Okay, I'm going to be emailing everybody the PowerPoint in about 10 minutes, and so you'll have a complete record. And I know that Rishi recorded the session, so it'll end up being on the YouTube, and he'll end up sending you the link to the YouTube session. In that case, Michele, I'm signing out.
Okay.
We'll see you all next week. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you very much. See you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.